Good afternoon, and today I would like to talk to you about the picture of Dorian Gray. Sometimes I like to do poems, sometimes I like to discuss little extracts from books. If you haven't read The Picture of Dorian Gray, it's well worth a look. It is one of the darker books that I've ever read. I think I like quite dark literature myself, but this one is particularly appealing. Um, it's narcissism and nihilism. Makes a lot of good references and points. The thing is, with nihilism, it means believing in nothing, which makes it all the more ridiculous that such a large book could be written on what is essentially nothing. But it is, and it's brilliant, and it is terrifying. Oscar Wilde himself was famously hedonist, which basically just means that he believed that everything that he did should be in accordance and for the benefit of himself. One of his quotes was, "I would give anything for a new experience." I suppose we all kind of know what that's like. Um, he was a homosexual ish. He loved the experience, I suppose, of sleeping with men. But again, I think it was just to satisfy his base needs. This wasn't I am attracted to men. It's I am attracted to sex and self indulgence, and so I will do that. And it doesn't matter whether man or woman is the man he was famous for having an affair with, James. No, it's gone. Um, yeah, tremendous controversy caused, to which he really didn't think he was going to get called out. um, Defied the government and the religion, and obviously religion being a powerful part of government in the early 1900s, uh, saw him put in prison for his roles, and love letters between himself and I think it's James were used in court in order to prosecute him. Yeah, not morally deplorable man, but a very enjoyable mind. I'm going to start. I think this is I think it's the end of the first chapter. Yeah, the end of the first chapter really kind of gives you a picture of uh, Oscar Wilde. All the characters are Oscar Wilde. All the characters are Oscar Wilde in different uh, pseudonyms, if you like. I think he said Basil is who I would like to be. Henry is what the people see me as, and Dorian is who I would like to be, perhaps in another life. Say it. Well, anyway. The pater considered for a few moments. He likes me, he answered after a pause. I know he likes me. Of course, I flatter him dreadfully. I find a strange pleasure in saying things to him that I know I shall be sorry for having said. As a rule, he is charming to me, and we sit in the studio and talk of 1,000 things. Now and then, however, he is horribly thoughtless, and seems to take a real delight in giving me pain. Then I feel, Harry, that I have given away my whole soul to someone who treats me as if it were a flower to put in his coat, a bit of decoration to charm his vanity, and ornaments for a summer's day. Days in summer, Basil, are apt to linger, murmured Lord Henry. Perhaps you will tire sooner than he will. It is a sad thing to think of, but there is no doubt that genius lasts longer than beauty. Beauty with a capital B. So genius with a capital G. That accounts for the fact that we all take such pains to overeducate ourselves. In the wild struggle for existence, we want to have something that endures. And so we fill our minds with rubbish and facts in the silly hope of keeping our place. The thoroughly well-informed man That is the modern ideal. And the mind of the thoroughly well-informed man is a dreadful thing. It is like a bric-a-brac shop, all monsters and dust and everything priced above its proper value. I think you will tire first, all the same. Some day you will look at your friend and he will seem to you to be a little out of drawing, or you won't like his tone of colour or something. You will bitterly approach him in your own heart and seriously think that he has behaved very badly to you. The next time he calls, you'll be perfectly cold and indifferent. It will be a great pity, for it will alter you. What you have told me is quite a romance of art, one might call it. And the worst of having romance of any kind is that it leaves one so unromantic. Harry, don't talk like that. As long as I live, the personality of Dorian Gray will dominate me. You can't feel what I feel. You change too often. Ah, my dear Basil, that is exactly why I can feel it. Those who are faithfully know only the trivial side of love. It is the faithless who know love's tragedy. And Lord Henry struck a light on a dainty silver case and began to smoke a cigarette with a half-conscious and satisfied air, as if he had summed up the world in a phrase. There was a rustle of chirruping sparrows in the green lacquer leaves of the ivy, and the blue cloud shadows chased themselves around the grass like shadows. How pleasant it was in the garden, and how delightful other people's emotions were. Much more delightful than their ideas, it seemed to him. One's own soul and the passion of one's friends, those were the fascinating things in life. He pictured to himself the silent amusement, the tedious luncheon that he had missed by staying so long with Basil Hallward. Had he gone to his aunt's, he would have been sure to have met Lord Goodbody there, and the whole conversation would have been about the feeding of the poor and the necessity for model lodging houses. Each class would have preached the importance of those virtues for which exercise there was no necessity in their own lives. The rich would have spoken on the value of thrift, and the idle grown eloquent over the dignity of labour. It was charming to have escaped all that. As he had thought of his aunt, an idea seemed to strike him. He turned to Hallward, and said, "My dear fellow, I have just remembered." "Remembered what, Harry?" "Where I heard the name Dorian Gray." "Where was it?" asked Hallward with a slight frown. "Don't look so angry, Basil. It was at my aunt's, Lady Agatha's. She told me she had discovered a wonderful young man who was going to help her in the East End, and that his name was Dorian Gray. I am bound to state that she never told me he was good-looking. Women have no appreciation of good looks. At least, good women have not. She said that he was very earnest and had a beautiful nature. I at once pictured to myself a creature with spectacles and lank hair, horribly freckled and tramping about on huge feet. I wish I had known this was your friend." "I'm very glad that you didn't, Harry." "Why?" "I don't want you to meet him." "You don't want me to meet him?" "No." "Mr. Dorian Gray is in the studio, sir," said the butler, coming into the room. "You must introduce me now," cried Lord Henry, laughing. The painter turned to his servant, who stood blinking in the sunlight. "Ask Mr. Gray to wait, Parker. I shall be in a few moments." The man bowed and went up the walk. Then he looked at Lord Henry. "Dorian Gray is my dearest friend," he said. "He has a simple and beautiful nature. Your aunt was quite right in what she said of him. Don't spoil him. Don't try to influence him. Your influence would be bad. The world is wide and has many marvelous people in it. Don't take away from me the one person who gives my art whatever charm it possesses. My life as an artist depends on him. Mind, Harry, I trust you." He spoke very slowly, and the words seemed wrung out of him almost against his will. "What nonsense you talk," said Lord Henry, smiling and taking Hallward by the arm. He almost led him into the house. Characteristic of Hallward all over, really, until he gets a little bit older. because when he gets a bit older, he doesn't get so cocky. He's a very smart man. But he's meant to be. Hence the whole kind of thing. But, Wilde kind of highlights his flaws when he's talking about the shadows chasing each other around. I think what he's trying to say is that Henry is very clever and very devoid of contradictions within himself. But all he's doing is going round and round chasing his tail. He's not actually achieving anything. He's just clever, perpetuating his own intelligence, which is useless. Useless indeed. I particularly enjoy the quote, "Don't spoil him." It's something that comes up later in the book as well. It compares him to an apple, an ivory, and the idea of bruising fruit, which is obviously a terrifying idea. It's about kind of ruining what is unruined. It's about destroying innocence. It's about blackening white. And I wonder if that's kind of what Wilde wanted, to blacken white. Perhaps. In another life. Right. So I'm just going to read you one of something on my own. When I was looking at it, it reminded me of Oscar Wilde. Just kind of the self-intuitive, introspective kind of way that Wilde writes. I looked at a bit that I wrote and I thought, oh, that links up quite well. So I'm writing a book. It's about a young woman who is going through life. She's got a little brother. She likes hanging out with a little brother. It's kind of like a coming of age, but a modern coming of age written in kind of an old style. I thought it would contrast quite well, and I enjoy writing it. So this is about. It's about halfway through the chapter. I might not read it all. There's something immeasurably powerful and distinct about the trees in summer. During the winter months, I tend to gloss over trees. Their forlorn faces reek of death, as if all of the skin has been flayed from them. They are the living carcass of that which was and is so sporadically alive. Here in the air, in the trees, death has decided to let beauty be. Or perhaps death changes with the season, for death must be master of the fate of more than people, but of woodland animals, insects, and trees too. I wonder if death is fonder of trees, and that is why he lets them live for so long. A tree's offspring and social circle seem to die and be born as quickly. Perhaps death appreciates the business, or doesn't, and a tree's extraordinary life is punishment for giving the beady-eyed stalker so much work to do. Such burden, the life of a human, so much death. To live 10 more times, to witness death's work over and over. Does a tree become desensitized to the dark, flowing, abrasive, and sudden ends? Perhaps it is why the tree does not talk. Aku bon dia, I whisper to myself. The trees must feel like there is no point in talking. Death will have the final word anyway. A breeze hits me, shivers my spine. A tree in the summer is much more to behold, though. Its skin looks radiant, glowing, pouring out with soft, defiant waves of colour. Seems to get warmer the closer we approach. If death's effect on trees in the winter is that of stricken depravity, then death must be born again this summer. His skin is soft, plush. The beady dark eyes become the wells of hope that embody the bountiful wealth of youth and gaiety. The icy stare of barren and forsaken justice is nothing more than a careful glance and a warm smile of an eternally mature man that wants youth to frolic in being young. After all, what could ever really die that has never really lived? I need a boost, Lizzie. Gal's eyes never leave the tree. How can he be so sure of himself? It is as if the little acorn knows exactly what he wants. Just don't fall. My voice has become sullen. I give Gal his boost and watch him take the first branch. He hoists himself up, effortlessly. I'm surprised by his vigor. I find it difficult to comprehend the fearless nature of children. As Gal takes branch after branch, climbing higher and higher, he puts a higher and higher stake on his activity. What puzzles me is why he would put up such a high stake. He must be all in now, with nothing to win. Perhaps he just enjoys playing. Perhaps the method is more important to him. Is this something ingrained in just Gal and children and people like Gal? Or is this something that people have in them but then lose as time grows sterner? I should love to live as one who is obsessed with the process and not the outcome. I should love that my life could be purposeless and beautiful. How far are you going to climb, Gal? I call up. He's already climbed higher than I thought was safe, but I don't want to stifle him. Fill his mind with doubt, especially not at this point. I'm going to climb until I can no longer reach the next branch, he calls after. Then he pauses for a second and follows up. And when I can no longer reach the next branch, I shall come down and wait until I grow. I shall climb the tree and then reach the next branch. I tried to resist the urge, but I could not stop myself. What will happen when you reach the top? I released this narcissistic length of scaly dark rope into Gale's green and blue world without any kind of leash and any kind of guise. It is unkind to introduce forethought to such a beautiful method. I think I did it because I was jealous. I saw Gale sparkling, and I could not bear to feel so filthy beneath him. I feel shame. Gale decides that he has a purpose, then what he is doing will cease to be beautiful. What he is doing will cease to be an action, but a method, and a method is something that cruel men have, an agenda. When I consider a conversation, I think of all the people who have had an agenda. A teacher trying to help, a priest trying to gain power, a boy led by lust, a quest for knowledge for the sake of appearances. What if we could meet a stranger and talk without pretense, without seeking to gain the upper hand, without subplotted mind games, intuition, and pretense, and second guessing? If words could just be exchanged between two people, there would be no reaching the top, just climbing. No one would care which branch they are sitting on, or how high up they are, who is above or below them, because there would be no motive to care. A child is not motivated to climb a tree, nor should he be. I wish that I could take back the words, but they have already been said. A sparked fire that might destroy a white piece of paper. No sooner said did the words taste bitter on my lips. I wait fearfully and anxiously. I created the thunder that I fear. Gale pauses for a second. He looks like he is searching inside himself for an answer that he doesn't have. Then suddenly, the answer becomes obvious to him. I shall look from the top for another tree to climb. The words fall light upon my heart, and I breathe a sigh of relief for the impending grief that threatened to take Gale from a path covered in leaves, leading nowhere, and simultaneously everywhere to a very straight and narrow path. No one knows where that first path leads, but the second leads to death. The death of all things, both physical and metaphysical. Death of emotion, of hope. The moment you have a purpose is the moment you become an island and a machine. Oh no, not today. It shall be dark before long. I shall never find you, and you will have to live in the trees forever. The joy and whimsy return to my voice, the warmth to my heart. No, Lizzie, I don't want to live in a tree, Gal calls as he unholsters one leg to start climbing down. Be sure, I am positive that I never want to live in a tree. One day you might have to, but Gal didn't hear me. Perhaps it is just women that nature thrusts purpose upon. If I can't climb my tree without a purpose, or at least with someone who wants nothing from me, then I would rather climb my tree alone. Perhaps if faced with such a decision, I should choose not to climb a tree at all. Ta-da! So that's just a piece about them going to the woods, and just kind of looking at Gal's innocence versus Lizzie's innocence, Elizabeth's innocence. and just kind of seeing what her mind kind of makes of it. So anyway, it's been an enjoyable little chat. I look forward to the next one.